vibration that Baba Leo brings reminds me of those good old songs we use to march our way to freedom. That journey continues. I can't believe that this organization was started in 1980. I was born in 1985, 5 years after its inception, and he still continues that journey. He is inspiration. That is what brought us into this room tonight. Our organization, the Teaching Artists Institute, began its very turbulent relationship with the Roots of Scouting in 2019. And we learned so many things from that opportunity to grow in partnership with the Roots of Scouting. And here we are, still standing, still doing programming, and now here we are 4 years later. He's invited us back to say, well, what's up? What y'all been doing? It sounds like you're still going and you're still moving, and I respect that. And so I've come here today with a delegation because I realize that I can show you better than I can tell you what our organization has been doing by those that are involved in the process. And so the Freedom Rides journey, I'll end with that. But our organization, we're dedicated to art for social transformation. I'm an artist. I understand the power of ideation, innovation, design thinking. And in that role as an artist, I find myself curating experiences that uses the art to take history off the page. The Freedom Rides Tour is one such example. But we do that in 8 countries around the world. But there's no place like home. We will always work right here on Ground Zero in Baltimore. And I just can't help but notice that you have on the Roxborough reunion. My grandmother is from Roxborough, North Carolina. I have land in this place. There's no way. That is nothing but confirmation of the divine alignment that my steps were ordered into this room tonight. Thank you for that. You have no idea what it means to me. You must know Dorothy Pettaway.
How you doing, cuz?
Everybody in Roxborough is related. Having that been said, we work in 8 countries, 6 of which are on the continent of Africa. I mentioned that there are no places in the world that tell the stories of our people. Even in Africa, they have very little history, very little knowledge of our tribe right here. And so we have a special guest, Professor Dr. Maxine Ankra, also from North Carolina. She's going to tell her story and how we're connected. And our organization is working in her hometown, where she finds citizenship in Uganda. In the east coast of Africa, we're also outside of Uganda in Tanzania and Kenya. On the west coast of Africa, we're in Ghana, Gambia, and Liberia. But like I said, always right here in Baltimore, you can't help other places until you help home. And we have Ayanna May, our current artist in residence. We understand the importance of urban redevelopment, the housing crisis in Baltimore. And so we're buying properties and we're renovating them. And who better to have as neighbors than artists, creators that are gonna imagine a better world. And so we have Ayanna May here today, and she's gonna talk about our first property here in Baltimore. We have literature there. And then of course we have our president, Baba Haki Ami, who's going to tell you more about our initiatives around the world. And then hopefully, if time permits, I'll circle back to the Freedom Rides. Because again, when I ask myself, what is a story that's so important that in every region around the world where we work, we need to tell that? And it, for me, was the Freedom Rides. Because when I listened to Professor Dr. Maxine Ankra, she said, the reason I left this country is because though born in 1934, I left in the 60s because I couldn't take the racism. I knew I would never self-actualize in this country. And now she's here at 89 years old to tell us how her journey was. A lot of us say, oh, we're going back to Africa. We African-centered. Let us put together an African program. Many of us don't even have passports, have never been to Africa. And so after I finish talking about the Freedom Rides, I want to leave a challenge to the Roots of Scouting organization that so proudly uses the African outline on its logo and on its t-shirts. When is the last time that you've been back to your roots? When is the last time that the Roots of Scouting organization was in Africa, on the continent? And how can our organization be a part of facilitating that for you? So at this time, I want to invite our first example of our work, Dr. Professor Maxine Ankra. Please clap because she's 89 years old and she's 2 years from Uganda for this meeting.
I don't know whether you say age before beauty. I am not 89 3.5. You say, but she's 3. No, 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 no. I'm 3.5. Actually, I'm 4 months from being 90. Oh. Opportunity to be with you. I haven't heard anything about scouting in many, many years. It's a word that gets passed by in much of Africa. But having seen your being engaged for all these many years, I will go back and say, what are you doing in scouting in Uganda? Now, she has told you that among the reasons why she has brought us here is that some time ago we got to hear about what was happening with the Black Conference in April of this year, in actual fact. And we said, oh, we'd like to be a part of that. And over a night, I was invited to that conference where you must have heard of Marcus Garvey. And when we were very young, and I am sure many of you were at university, hearing about Marcus Garvey saying, come back to Africa, come back to Africa. But at the same time, there was another trend, and it was demonstrated by Tarzan. And what did we see in the movies? It was Tarzan flying over the trees, and then there were the monkeys, and at the base of it was these black men with the spears. And what did it do? It really tainted our image of what Africa was all about. However, I went to university. I'm a Clark graduate. I went to the Hartford Seminary Foundation, and guess what happened? A handsome, you know the rest of the story. And I said, I will do it. With exception, I will not follow all of your cultures. Because in much of Africa, a man can have as many wives. I know that would appreciate, you know. And I says, nothing doing. I will go back as long as you make a promise. I'll never ask you, because I grew up in racist North Carolina with illiterate parents, sharecroppers and all the rest. I will never ask you to stay here as long as you don't ask me to take a second wife. And after 55 years, I left him to the Father and to the grave. So my coming here at the present time is timely in this sense that we have graduated through our African scholarship from the notion that the African is bush, that all there is the people in the trees, that we have diseases that kill, that our politicians are all corrupt. Last night I heard that Trump is saying he is not going to compete with Obama. And so when you hear that kind of, you wonder who has the right kind of leadership. But back to where we are, had an opportunity to meet Kim, and I hope I don't miss Kim. And they said, come over, because we are having this meeting in Baltimore in April, and we're examining the situation of Africa as it is today. And I was told by a person who works with her out of Uganda, you come. And the purpose of my coming then and being here now is really to re-echo the statement of Marcus Garvey. For if you, and I know that you're all educated people, have been listening to the news out of Africa today, particularly out of West Africa, Africans are saying now is the time that we reclaim our roots. It is not roots as roots in witchcraft, but Africa is the first landmass in the history of mankind. Africans are literally the first humankind. And as we stand here today, it is the largest population on earth. It has the greatest agricultural potential. It has so great wealth of all kinds that ever since independence in 1884, 86, the Mzungus, as we call the whites, have been taking our oil, taking our all of the minerals, taking out. Now the Chinese have gotten into the act. But over the last few months, we hear that Africa has begun to arise. Says, no, enough is enough. And so therefore we have come here to invite you and across America as diaspora to come and join us, starting with especially the young. That's why your activity, your directions is so relevant for us. So we have come to say, come and join us next year at the prodding of Kim. And once again, you tell me your name and I will make it. Aki. I said, come over next July, for we want not to talk about Africa rising, but Africa reclaimed. And we don't want to start with you Africans that are over there miles and miles and miles away, because there is underdevelopment. It has been robbed. It wasn't allowed to develop in the interest of Africans, but rather we can say, we will take back that which is ours. And we are titling this conference, Africa Reclaimed. But we're going further to say, now, although there is 1.9 billion of us, 400 million are not on the continent. Even here, I think we have, 13, 16 million. Down in Brazil, there are 200 million descendants of slaves. And they're all over the world. But wherever they are in the world, they are underneath because of the great potential. It's not because we have nothing to offer. It is because we offer so much. And until now, the very spirituality of Africans have prevented Africans from killing and destroying and doing the kinds of things that had we given tit for tat, we would not be where we are, even in America, even today. So this conference said, come over. We're hoping to have 1,000 people, 500 of which are you. You can bring all of you, and I'll still have room to spare. And again, as I said, this is July. We are just at the beginning of the planning stage. It was supposed to have taken place in 2019, as Ghana said. And you know, Ghana has said, come home. But Ghana was almost alone. As far as we are aware, I may be one of the few educated people who've worked for the last, from 1962 until the present time, and she says I'm a university professor in East Coast, in Uganda. And so we're saying, come wherever you will, and we're saying to governments, make it convenient, make it possible, make it worthwhile. And so to the extent that we join hands to this end, by next year, July, what is this? It's already September. We should have at least 100, 200, 500, 1,000. Ghana, I understand, is about 3,000 now. Uganda may be one. You're welcome. Thank you.
So often when we hear stories of our root, after hearing about it, it's like, whoo, I'm so glad they picked me up. Why? Because it seems like nothing but struggle and heartache for those that were left behind. And so when I hear a story of one of our elders, born in North Carolina in 1934, repatriated in the 60s, she was there in the excitement of Nkrumah when he was the first to emancipate Africa from colonial rule. In Ghana with her Ghanaian husband, by choice, children by birth. Then they moved to Uganda, and for over 50 years, she's been living in Uganda. The wealth that she's been able to, and you know, I don't want to put your financials out in the open, but what I will say is that they are not struggling. When we work with Africans, many times it's a begging bowl. What can you give us? How often do we have an elder of our own making that comes back with her own money, on her own ticket, on a tour across the country to say, I am here to give. This is an opportunity. Just come. Let me show you what I've been able to do and build without the burden of racism. You can only do but so much in a liberated zone. And that is what the Roots of Scouting organization has created here in Baltimore since the 80s. But for the next decade, we have to figure out what is next. And the next step for the Roots of Scouting is to go back to the root. And our organization, the Teaching Artists Institute, is interested in helping to facilitate. Hey, brother, he's a part of the Gaylord community. No problem. Don't hide. Have a seat. Yes.
He's my cousin.
Yes, he's her cousin. Baby cousin. But we want to be a part of helping to facilitate that. So when you ask, what are we doing as an organization? I mean, ask your own. Baba Olamina, he's come with us to Tanzania. He understands the capacity of our organization on the ground. Our roots, the deep roots that we're building with a relational economy, with the local artists and artisans and activists and African-centered thinkers and religious leaders and scholars. And so that is an example of not what I'm saying to you with a PowerPoint presentation with videos and slides, but right here in front of you in living color. You heard your invitation. Next up, I want to bring